Welcome to The Big Picture. I'm Phil Arno. On this big picture, we're going to be talking about a little bit of broadcast history in Western New York, a place that has an enormous impact on the broadcasting industry.
Phil.
I'm trying to do a show here, Ron.
Phil, I'm sorry, but this can't wait. You have an interview that's scheduled. Did you?
Yeah, that's later on. Yeah, I know.
No. The guy said he can't wait, and he wanted to know if he could possibly push it ahead.
Would
you mind? I know that you're busy right now.
I can't. I mean,
it won't take all that long. Please.
All right. Okay.
Let me give you his resume. Okay.
All right.
Here's his credentials, his references and stuff, and I'll bring him in, and you can talk to him. Okay.
Okay. This is very unusual. You know that.
I know it's very unprofessional.
Okay.
But
All right.
I apologize.
Everybody, please.
You can come on in.
Patience. We have some letters of recommendation. Let's see. The resume is for Daniel Neaverth. A little tough to read. A letter of recommendation from Joseph Pinto. I think he was a wrestler, I think. And then there's Donald Pizzola. That's highly recommended. He used to be a basketball player, I think. Not sure. Not very good, though. He didn't last long. And then there's Fred Klustine. Now, I've heard of him. He was a male stripper. This is a little dated, though. It's been, okay. And Marty Kremsky. He was with the NFL. He had a good career, too. But that's kind of a little... Okay, the resume. All right. Okay. Okay. Mr. Neaverth. It's been a long time since I've seen a resume done in cursive. Yeah, it's a longhand is kind of unusual, a little hard to understand, but tell me a little bit about why you think you have a future in broadcasting.
Okay, because I've been here, I've done this, and I want to join your organization, all right? I know all about TV because I was on TV, and I know things like, you're on, or cut, Mostly when I was on, they would go, cut, okay? But I did TV, and I did radio, and I went to Syracuse.
Syracuse?
Yes.
Syracuse,
yes.
I think that's on your resume.
Yeah, put it on
Syracuse
there.
University, that's very impressive.
No, it was the Curran Studios in Syracuse.
Syracuse, okay.
But I would tell people that I went to Syracuse, and they would assume.
Okay.
And that helped me get a few jobs.
All right, well, okay, I can imagine that would be...
I really need... I don't want to beg, but I need this job. I have 4 boys.
Oh, well, I mean, I know what it's like to have babies at home. And just, how old are your children?
Okay, one of them is 62. The other one is 60, 59, and 57 years old. But I still help them out occasionally.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. Well, you seem to have a little ambition.
Right.
That counts for something.
I work hard.
Yeah, I mean, the responsibilities here, I mean, this is a very, very complex position, and I can show you around later. I mean, folks, bear with me. This only takes a second. Tell me a little bit about your background.
My background, okay. Like I said, I worked in television, I worked in radio, and I worked at a heritage radio station. Everybody in Western New York knows about WKBW. Okay.
I've heard of that.
Yes.
I've heard of that. That was
1430 Main Street, 50,000 watts.
I thought that was
Greenland, Florida.
Was that a church?
What? No, it was next to the Churchill Tabernacle because Dr. Churchill owned the radio station.
Well-known Bible works, I think.
Right. Build your station on a strong foundation. That's what he did. Yeah. Okay.
It was very pious.
Yeah,
pious.
Unfortunately,
it was very reverent.
Yes.
If I remember correctly.
Yes. It was very reverent. But the station no longer exists in that location. And it's kind of sad because they're going to...
It didn't go to Syracuse, did it?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, let's think about that location now.
All right.
How was that location
from looking at the outside, I'm wondering about the inside. Whoa, you still have the same rug. That's a sign.
So here we are, 1430 Main Street, and in the history of American broadcasting, this is one of the most legendary addresses, the home of WKBW Radio.
Right over there, program director's office is right there.
My name is Jeff Kay, program director of WKBW Radio.
The secretary was over there, and then on this side, this was the feared general manager.
Let's take a tour and reminisce of the old KB.
Okay, sure. Let's start with the general manager.
Sounds good.
Okay, this was the inner sanctum of the general manager, and like most general managers in almost any business, you didn't see him a lot. And as a matter of fact, we like that. As disc jockeys and newsmen, the less you saw of the general manager, you were doing okay. Oh, look at this. They've expanded this area here, but what is this? Oh my God, Joey Reynolds shoes.
Name some of the more memorable general managers that you had.
And only one that I can think of who actually hated me, absolutely hated me. When he came in, Sandy Beach was a program director, and Sandy said,
"You're going to open your desk drawer on the left-hand side after you unlock it. There'll be a contract in there that's in an envelope for Dan Neaverth." I said, "Here's what I want you to do, okay? Don't even open it."
Because at one point, I was probably the highest paid radio or TV personality in the city.
Any kind of conversation we have about his contract, just leave it to me. We're doing very well with this, and I'd appreciate that. That would be a courtesy that I would enjoy.
This was one of my favorite rooms right here. This is the men's room, okay? And it was only a short distance, so you didn't have to run and have to use that. Okay, and this room.
This would have been what?
The newsroom.
Okay.
Newsroom. This is where the machines were, the teletype machines. Over here, we would have a window where they could look into the studio, and they would give us a signal of 5 minutes. I'm ready in 5 minutes.
Stand by for news from the WKBW Total News Department.
This is where Irv Weinstein, Jim Fagan, Henry Brock, that's where they turned out the news and did a heck of a job.
But it was in the back of the building where the magic was really made.
Oh, yes. Well, some of the magic was made up here. But we, oh my gosh, this is it. This is where the studio was.
Paint us a picture of what this studio looked like.
Okay. The newsman would sit back here, a desk and a chair, microphone on a boom. Disc jockey would be right here, and the control room being there. The engineer would sit a little bit to the left.
You have 5 seconds to air.
July 4th, 1958, KB flipped their format to sort of a top 40 format, future sonic radio. Right. How much advance notice were you given about that format change? Did you know that it was coming down the pipe?
I knew something was happening, and I wasn't exactly sure what it was, but I assumed it was what happened at WBNY. It condensed the music to just nothing but the hits, and that's what happened here. It was a little more flexible here when they went top 40.
After all these years returning back to this space that played such an important part in your life and your career, and not just your life, but in the lives of thousands, tens of thousands, millions of Western New Yorkers, what are you feeling right now seeing this space?
Brings back some, really pleasant memories. And even though, some things happened in this building for me that weren't that pleasant, I don't have that as a memory. I'm thinking of the positive stuff that happened here. Boy, there were a lot of happy moments from here.
It's your favorite station for music and news. Stay tuned all the while to WKBW 1520 on your dial.
And welcome back. That was a wonderful tour of a piece of history, Buffalo broadcast history. And as we all know, it's not Mr. Neverbreath.
That's okay. That's
I think it's Danny Neaverth. I mean, it's
you know what, Phil? Over the years, I would get letters from people, and it was Dan Everett, Dan Evering, Dan Neaverth, Dan Neaverth. Okay, so that's okay.
Okay.
And I was probably one of the first people to use a real name. Everybody else had, easy to remember names. Don Burns, okay, people like that.
Interesting. Interesting. Yes, I know. I learned about that when I first started at the radio station, and I was actually, that location was a very big part of my history. I was a sophomore at Canisius College, and I was taking a course in radio and television from a gentleman named John Corbett. And John Corbett was a longtime anchor at Channel 4. And I went up to him after class one day and I said, look, I'd like to talk about possibly how I get into the industry. And he said, well, let's have coffee in the student union. So we went over, we sat down, and I said, eventually I'd like to get into the film industry. And he said, well, in Buffalo, there is no film industry, so you're on the wrong...
Where it is.
Right. And he said, what I would advise is that you look for the smallest radio station in Western New York. Go down to Olean or go to Dunkirk and talk to the program director and tell him you will do anything, sweep the floors, do anything. You just get a job at this small radio station, and then you'll work your way up, and eventually you can work in TV. And then, who knows, then maybe you can go into film at some point. So the next day, I called WKBW Radio, and I talked to Barbara Billups, who was Jeff Kay's secretary. And I said, I'm a student at Canisius College, and I'm doing a paper on how you run a radio station. And can I interview the program director? I thought it sounded good, good way to get in. And she said, okay, let me check. And she said, okay, he's open his schedule on Thursday, come in at 2 o'clock. I said, okay. So I went in and I sat down across from Jeff Kay and I interviewed him. I had my little piece of paper and I'm making notes, and I interviewed him about how radio stations operate. And we talked for a good 45 minutes. I mean, I was impressed. And at the end of 45 minutes, he was all set and we wrapped up a little bit. And I said, okay, can I have a job? and he lectured me then for the next 15 minutes saying how tight a ship this was and how they couldn't have any dead weight. And then he thought about it for a second. He said, well, you know what? We have something called Winterfest that we're going to do in another week. And it's at one of these ski slopes. And I need somebody to collect money for parking. We're going to have a lot of cars there, and we're going to charge $5 to the car for parking. Can you do that? Are you responsible enough to do that? Sure, I can do it. No problem. John Corbett said to me, if anybody ever asks you if you can do something, the answer is always, yeah, no problem. I can do that. I've done that a lot. So that was my beginning.
I think there's a phrase, fake it and you'll make it.
Yes, as long as you can figure it out after the fact. Right. After the fact. So yeah, that was my beginning at WKBW Radio, sophomore to Canisius College.
I remember Winterfest because I raced Stan Roberts at Kissing Bridge, and I beat him. We both fell 2 times coming down.
Well, I learned a lot from Jeff Kay, and one of the things that I learned that was the most important thing about running the station was involving the audience, involving a local connection. That's what we try and do at WBBZ. Stay tuned. We're going to come back. We've got some videos from Sandy Beach and Joseph Reynolds, I think his name was.
Reynolds, yes.
It'll be interesting. We'll be back. We'll be back right after this. Welcome back to The Big Picture. We're doing a story. My guest is Danny Neaverth.
I wanted to mention something about Jeff Kay. You were talking about him before.
Jeff Kay.
For those of you who aren't familiar, Jeff Kay was what I would say the best writer, performer, and he was also the voice of NFL films. Had a fantastic voice, and he brought production values on the radio for the football games.
Mike's for the play-by-play. Meltzer, Azar, Rakowski, stand by.
He had music and intros, and it made it exciting. It wasn't just three guys talking about football and what happened.
I remember.
He was an amazing talent, one of the best.
Yeah, I remember standing in with the engineers once when we took over the Buffalo Bills broadcast, and Jeff was engineering, he was producing the intro. And I can remember him saying, no, we need more bass on that.
Yes.
Because we need it to boom. We need it to be exciting.
Countdown to football.
He was a great guy.
He was one of the best, and I had the privilege of working with some of the best people ever in broadcasting. And you're going to talk about another one of them right now.
Yeah, Sandy Beach. You know, to begin with, working at that radio station, everybody there, I'm talking about everybody, the mood was, how can I make you laugh?
Exactly.
How can I be more outrageous than the next guy? And I've got some stories about Sandy Beach that will, right after this, we're going to go to a video with Sandy. Take a look.
KB Radio and KB Television were owned by the same people, Capital Cities Broadcasting, just a fabulous company. And part of the success, a big part of it, belonged to Irv Weinstein. Now, I loved Irv Weinstein, and I think he loved me.
Sandy, if you ever need a favor.
And we had some adventures together. Because Irv used to do his show prep, getting his newscast ready in our building because there was more room there. So he would prepare it in our building, then take it and go across the little walkway there and do it on Channel 7. Well, this one time I had a little break. I was doing afternoons, and I see something going on outside one of the windows of the narrow part of the building. I see some shadows and stuff like that. I don't know what it is. I thought maybe there's an animal out there. So I went over there and I looked. There was an animal out there for sure. You know what it was? It was two people humping. They were humping in the giant KB parking lot. So I said, nobody's going to believe me. It's like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I have to tell Irv.
Everybody does something better than most other people.
I went down and Irv, come here, you got to see this. He said, what's going on? I said, people are humping in our driveway.
We'll have more on the story tonight on Nightcast.
So Irv and I ran down to the building, to the window in the building, and we're watching. They saw us, and it didn't bother them. They just kept going. I have going like the Energizer Bunny, absolutely. While Mr. KB Radio and KB Television News and Channel 7 were the audience. Sometimes you feel like a nut, sometimes you don't.
Sandy was a real character. We used to hang out a lot together. We would go to the Buffalo Braves games together. We would come over to my house and we would play pickup basketball in the backyard. And, you know, there was one time, and everybody was trying to be funny and outrageous, and nothing was off the table. And one time I was sitting in the disc jockey lounge with Sandy, and the phone rings. And he picks up the phone, and he said, hello. And he listens for a second, and he says, oh, no, I'm sorry, you probably didn't hear. He passed away. Okay, and he said, oh, you know, and he hangs up. And I said, Sandy, what was that all about? He said, well, somebody was asking for some John so-and-so. And I looked at him, I said, Sandy, that's Shane's real name. Shane had just started at the station. And Sandy said, oops, oops. And so Shane walks in just a few minutes later, and Sandy says, I got a little confession to make. So-and-so just called for John, and I told him you were dead. and Shane thinks about it for a second and says, Yeah, that's my banker. He'll call back. It's like, okay, that was just one of the things.
So you mentioned outrageous things. We did stuff on the air that you couldn't do it now. Okay, even the characters that I had the Indian chief. Okay, you couldn't do that now because I would go, "Oh, big fellow, whoa, let me get down off my horse." Boom. Okay. Or the engaged woman, all right? Don't touch me, I'm an engaged woman. You can't do that stuff anymore because the phones would ring off the wall. You can't talk about Indians. You can't talk about women, engaged women, you know, and it's really a shame because it was a fun thing.
Some of those things you couldn't even do back then.
Well,
and there was a lot of stuff that we did, and believe me, folks, there were a lot of stuff that we can't talk about on the air.
Okay.
So
that happened. Yes.
Okay, so you know what? One of these things that we did that was really a lot of fun, and I have a souvenir here.
Oh, I see what you have. The KB
yo-yos.
Yeah, basketball.
And I actually fit into this at one point. We would do basketball games. We would go to high schools and volunteer fire companies, and it was greatest fun. It was a good way to meet girls, too.
The only way it wasn't fun is when we played professional athletes.
Oh, they were
serious.
Yeah.
And players from the Buffalo Bills, because you're an athlete, you can't hold back.
Yeah.
We would always tell wherever we played, we're going to let you win the game in the last few seconds. We'll keep it close. These guys didn't want to keep anything close. You know, if you're a professional athlete, you're not going to show me.
No, they were definitely serious. There were a lot of, you could tell right at the beginning if we were going to have a fun game or if this was going to be serious. And watch yourself. Yeah, that's Joey Reynolds was before me at the radio station. I never got to work with Joey, but we have a video for Joey that I think you'll find very interesting. Let's go to the video.
We have a lot of memories on 1430 Main Street, and the reason is because it's legendary. In the earlier years with Art Wander and some of the legendary people who were in the morning on WKBW, they sat out front under an umbrella and did the morning show in the parking lot of 1430 Main Street. So I'm in Florida, in case anybody wonders, but I was in Buffalo for all those years and all over the country, and I never forgot 1430 Main Street.
Ridiculous, and I can't get no satisfaction. The Rolling Stones. You know what? If I catch that porky pig hanging around my carrot patch again.
But I was the first shock jock, they said, because I didn't do what everybody else on the station did or anybody else on any of the top 40 stations in America. That was always crazy. So I wanted to be loved by people. So I had everybody on that show that ever would. The Beach Boys came and sang live. Everybody came into the party. It was a party. And you never knew what you were going to have because I operated on the element of surprise, and I was also the same age as everybody listening.
Oh, I tried. Can't get no satisfaction.
I got the idea of creating characters. And we had Oliver Lightning and the Polish cleaning lady and Andy Bova from across the street who refused to park us free. You know, I mean, they were real people, but you had to orchestrate it. You had to make it a bit. Otherwise, it wasn't going to work to be funny to the audience. Danny and I had no script. Once in a while, we'd come up with an idea, maybe before we got there. Maybe we thought it would be good for the show because we exchanged views at 7 o'clock. I never knew what he was going to say, and he didn't know what I was going to say. He thought I was a jerk, and that was fine. You know, that was my role. And his was the straight ahead guy.
And we would go on sometimes 15 minutes. And program directors would go, oh my God, okay, you can't talk that long. This is a top 40 station. You gotta play the music. Okay, we'll play the music in 15 minutes, okay, when we're done talking.
I want you to sign this piece of paper.
No, we discussed this off the air.
I want you to sign this
happening
paper.
Tonight?
That's right. We want you to sign a peace pact with the Beatles.
No, I can't do that.
We had a wonderful relationship together. except Danny could not fill my shoes.
Oh my God. Look at this. All these years later, they have never been able to fill Joey Reynolds' shoes.
No one could, because I have big feet. I think that building is still haunted. They're going to tear it down. They're going to find that they can't tear it down because there are ghosts who are in the attic.
Radio comes alive. You're listening to KB.
All right, Mr. Neaverth, you've got the job. I want to explain to you some of the responsibilities. This is something that I do every day.
Okay.
My important role, my most important role here at the station. Now it's up to you.
Okay, I'll write them down so I remember.
Dishes.
Dishes.
Gotta clean the dishes every day.
Okay.
Okay? Garbage. Garbage has to go out every day.
Garbage. Okay, garbage.
Essential.
Out.
And most importantly,
What?
you have to clean up after my personal hero, John DeShulo. Don't let me down.
John DeShulo. Who's that?
And s'mores every day at 4.
S'mores? Where the are the marshmallows?
Oh, this is bad. This is very bad.